Okay, so we just started chapter 7 of Megillat Esther, and we're going to continue. I need someone to read, please, for it's a short chapter. And if anyone want to volunteer?
I'd like to do it, Rhonda.
Very good. Will you go right ahead?
Okay, chapter 7.
Yes.
So the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again to Esther on the second day of the banquet of wine, "Whatever is thy petition, Queen Esther, it shall be granted thee, and whatever thy request, even to the half of the kingdom, it shall be performed." Then Esther the queen answered and said, "If I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. If we had been sold for bondsman and bondswoman, I had held my peace, for the adversary is not worthy that the king be endangered." Then spoke the king Ahasuerus and said to Esther the queen, "Who is he and where is he that does presume in his heart to do so?" And Esther said, "An adversary and an enemy, even this wicked Haman." Then Haman was terrified before the king and the queen. And the king arose in his wrath from the banquet of wine and went into the palace garden. But Haman remained to make requests for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw there was evil determined against him by the king. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine. And Haman was fallen upon the couch whereon Esther was. Then the king said, "Will he even force the queen before me in the house?"
Thank you.
That's it.
Keep going.
Okay, go. As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. Then said Habonah, one of the chamberlains that were before the king, "Behold, also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman hath made for Mordecai, who spoke good for the king, standing in the house of Haman." And the king said, "Hang him thereon." So they hanged Haman on the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath assuaged.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, that's quite the chapter. You know, every time I try very hard to name the chapter, this chapter, in my estimation, is that this is called "Guess Who's Never Coming to Dinner Again." Okay, so
I like that.
So thank you for your lovely reading and rendition. Let's take it pasuk by pasuk and find out what's going on here, because this is the moment we've been waiting for, and we want to see exactly what has transpired here. Finally, we are getting to the point where everything is coming together. We still see that in this chapter 7 and chapter 6, things were very hurried, very rushed. Everybody is hurry to do this and hurry to do that, and let's get this done. And quickly this was said, and we're wondering what all the hurriedness is about. But what happens is that events are spinning out of control for Haman, and he is no longer the one who is wielding any power. He no longer has everything under his control. He has completely lost it, and now he's being revealed. The king and the first is very interesting. If everyone would mute themselves, please, I'd appreciate it. In the first pasuk, it says that the king and Haman come to the feast with the queen. The last
Right.
feast that they came to, Esther was waiting for them at the banquet hall, and Haman and the king, which kind of put them on equal footing, arrived together at Esther's banquet. Now it says that Haman, the king, and the queen, not just Esther, it says the queen, Queen Esther, they all three go together. So at this point, Esther has been elevated in her stature of walking with the king and Haman. And this entire chapter, she is referred to as the queen, not just Esther as in previous chapters. So the narrator wants us to know that she has the queenly status right now and has been elevated to be on the same playing ground, the same level as the king and Haman. So we see that they get to the banquet hall, and the next thing is the king is very anxious to have Esther tell him what this is all about. As we know from the prior chapter, he had a sleepless night. He was not able to fall asleep, and he has the book of remembrances brought before him, and he certainly finds out that Mordecai has saved his life. Mordecai is rewarded based on what Haman thinks the reward is coming to him, when actually it's going to Mordecai. And Haman, after parading Mordecai around the city, goes home humiliated, totally humiliated. And at the time that he walks into the house, his advisors, Haman's advisors and his wife, both agree that if he is facing Mordecai the Jew, they said they didn't realize that his adversary was a Jew, and that since his adversary is a Jew, he will fall. He will not be successful in his endeavors, and they all seem to jump ship in support and lack of support of Haman. While they are having their conversation, there's a knock at the door by the king's chamberlains, and they come to hurry Haman off to this banquet. Now, here again, we have a sense of urgency that that Haman needs to quickly come to this banquet, and the king is still very agitated. He is tremendously concerned that based on all that Haman described that should be done to honor the person who does something that the king wants to honor, everything, we remember we said the word king and royalty were mentioned 8 times in the course of his description of what should be done for who the king wants to honor. And the king now feels, not only does Haman want my wife, because the seeds of jealousy were planted in the king's mind at the first banquet, but the second thing that has been really on his mind is that bless you, is that the Haman wants not only the queen, but he wants the king's job and he wants the position to be king. So right now, the king doesn't have very soft, wonderful feelings, cuddly feelings for Haman. He's very, very anxious to find out what the queen wants, to get this moved on, and to see where this is all leading to. So the king says, up to half of my kingdom. We know that this is a general normal statement by the king, and that she then says to him, when he says, what can I grant you? What is your wish and what is your petition? Those are two different things, and your request and petition. And Esther then says to the king, I think in pasuk number 3, so the queen answered and
3.
said, in pasuk 3, if I have won your favor, your majesty, yada, yada. That's always how, she begins. Anyone begins when they address the king. Then my request and my position should be granted to me. And she says in pasuk 4, for we, and she includes herself with her people, have been sold, and my petition is that that we have been sold, that my people are going to be destroyed, slain, and annihilated. And then she says, she couches it by saying, but had we just been sold into slavery, then I wouldn't bother you, king, my husband, because it wouldn't be worth your time to consider our slavery. We would still have our lives. Basically, we have been slaves before. This won't be anything new. However, she is pleading for the life of herself and her people. And we find that her personal request is answered first, after she tells the king what she wants, and her petition, which is for someone else, is the life of her people, and that comes second. And then she goes on to explain these two requests for the king. Now, with the reference, why does she say, but we have been sold? Does anyone have any idea what that means? We have been sold. Well, the truth of
he got money for it.
that's right.
Haman paid him.
Who got money for what?
Hashverosh got money from Haman.
Haman offered him 10,000 talents of gold and 100,000, and we don't really know whether the king accepted the money or not, whether it went into the treasury or not, but there was a price put on the heads of this nation. This nation seems to stay unidentified, both when Haman is telling the king about this people that should no longer exist in the king's realm, but Queen Esther says, my people, but she doesn't, there is not one word that this is the Jewish people and that she's Jewish. There's no identification whatsoever here. So when she says that she has been sold, she is referring to the money that Haman has offered the king. But what she does, and also it means that in the word sold in this context could also mean that she and her people have been surrendered over to the enemy, which is Haman. Now, who has surrendered them over to Haman? The king. The king has allowed this to happen, and we don't really know if he knows that he did this or not. We're not even sure. And this is why a lot of the Mepharshim think that he's kind of a stupid guy. But the truth of the matter is that this was not a clearly set out, identifiable group of people when Haman discussed this. And she then says in the text, once she has said that her people have been sold and not just become slaves, and that's why she is taking up the time of the king with this situation. She then says, the king says exclaimed and said to Queen Esther, she is still elevated. See, it's King Ahasuerus and Queen Esther. Who is it? Like, he's astonished. He has no idea what's going on. Where is the one who dared to do this? And like, he's shocked. He's in shock. He doesn't understand what's going on. So she said, and Esther says, an adversary and an enemy, the wicked Haman. So in the Hebrew, it says, Ish, and she says these words very distinctly. Ish, Sar, V'oyev, Haman, Hara, Hazeh. The adversary and the enemy is this evil Haman, and there he is. Well, I think that this puts the king over the top. Here is Haman, his second in command. The king has been agitated for the whole entire night since the first banquet, and he's been worried that Haman wants his job as king. He also thinks that he wants his wife. And when the king gets the answer, I think that it's more than he can handle, and so he leaves the banquet hall and he goes straight into the garden. He goes into the palace garden. So this is just an example of, now there is this pause of what's happening, what's going on here. The king seems to have remained ignorant, not only knowing what Esther has revealed to him, but he seems to be ignorant in the fact that this same people that Esther is talking about was who Haman proposed and wrote the decree to annihilate. Now,
did Esther know about the money? Or was it a private transaction?
No, she did know about the money. Somehow Mordecai told her that, and he found out. Now, he sits at the palace gate, and I'm sure that's where a lot of the gossiping of what transpires, and it's his job, Mordecai, as one of the servants of the king, to be on his best game and know what's going on. So he hears everything. And I believe that she did know that there was a price, and that's exactly why she says, we've been sold.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Her strategy is quite interesting. First of all, she doesn't mention the name of her people. So she's kept that, she's still keeping that from him. And also, when she says that there is an adversary, again, she's not saying that the adversary is just for her people and more specifically, you know, the Jewish people. She's making it sound as if this adversary is for the king as well. So she,
That's
even
good.
though she's telling information, she's not giving specific information, is she? She's making it out as if the king is in danger equally as her own Jewish nation is.
Well, that's exactly right. If Mira, because what her plan was, listen, here is this woman who only has been queen for a few years, and you know, her position is tenuous. You know, that she knows that Vashti in a blink of an eye was gotten rid of, and she knows that she could be gotten rid of just as quickly, and so she has to tread lightly. But what she has done is she has put together a means of creating concern, major concern, jealousy, agitation. She has created this mystique about herself and her people and what she wants from the king up until this point. And so the king, being you know, concerned over what's going on with Mordecai, with Haman, she now adds fuel to the king's concerns, and he feels, oh, this is about me. It is about my job, that Haman wants to take my job, and he also wants to take my queen from me. So yes, the king now sees Haman as his own personal adversary, as well as someone who is going to do harm to the woman he loves, because we know he loves her. So yes, you're right. He is the adversary to both of them. And that's exactly the position that Esther wanted the king to be in. You know, we all wonder why, when the king put his scepter down to receive Esther to come into tell, you know, what she wanted from the king, why didn't she say to him, you know, honey, I'm so distressed. I heard this terrible thing of there's a decree out to kill me and my nation, and I need you to kill the guy who's gonna kill me and get rid of him. And by the way, get rid of the decree, because we're all gonna be annihilated in a year. So what would the king have said? He was said, what are you talking about? Oh, this has nothing to do with me. It's up to Haman. She had to set the stage and plant the seeds in the king's head for the king to come to these conclusions, not her. He had to come, and that's exactly why when he returns from the garden and he sees that Haman has fallen down on the couch where Esther is sitting, and he says to Haman, even in my house, when I'm home, you're going to ravish the queen, like in front of me? How dare you? This is so chutzpahdik, you know, this is beyond. Because in his head, you know, when he goes out, he's probably thinking, what? Here's my second in command. He wants my wife. Does he want my job? Is he going to kill me? What's he going to do? This becomes all about the king. It becomes about the king, not about Esther and her people. It becomes about the king. And that way, the king, through his own volition, his own decision, can make a quick decision to hang Mordecai. Because we know that the king doesn't always make his own decisions. So here we are, the king is in the garden. The king is probably thinking, cooling off and deciding what to do. He's probably pacing around. And there's Esther left alone with this evil, wicked man. What do you think was happening at the banquet hall while the king was out in the garden? What could have been happening? Anybody? Well,
Haman,
Did he
Hey,
beg for his life to Esther?
he could be begging for his
Yeah.
life. Yeah, okay.
Maybe she gave him more wine to drink.
I
Good
think
idea.
I think at that point he got sober real quick. Because he saw that his life is on the line, and he now he's at the end. But what do you think the conversation could be? Well, if I were Haman and I were quick on my feet, which we learned that he isn't, I would come up with some kind of fantastical plan to either annul the decree and say, I'm sorry, I beg your forgiveness, oh majesty, I'm so very sorry, it was a mistake, I didn't mean it, it was in a moment of inebriation, I was drunk, but whatever he wants to say. If he had been quick enough, he could have tried very hard to get out of the situation. It may not have worked, but he could have tried. But what he does is he's standing in front of the queen, and the Hebrew is very clear that he stands before the queen and then falls on her couch, which is so symbolic of what is happening to him. First, he is standing tall, he is in charge, he is the one who's making the decisions, and he falls to the floor in front of the queen.
Rhonda, does he know that she's Jewish?
Well, he does now.
Yeah, she just told him.
No, before.
No.
I don't think he does know.
No, he does know that she's Jewish now, because he knows who the people that he is going to annihilate,
Right.
and she identifies. And he could have said to her, "Oh, Your Majesty, I had no idea you were Jewish. You're so Persian. You're so assimilated. You're so part of the Persian culture. Of course, this decree doesn't include you, oh Majesty." No, he could have just done some fancy footwork here and gotten himself some kind of reprieve. But right now, he is in front of and falling in front of the queen, who's his accuser, and the king, who's stewing out in the garden. Now, the conversation also could have turned ugly, and he could have attacked her while the king was out to save his life. However, that probably would not have been a good idea, because I'm sure that there were guards and chamberlains and servants all around the banquet hall. So here we have a situation where we find that Haman is really not that smart. Up until this chapter, it looks as if he's got everything. He's cool, calm, collected, a little psycho, a little crazy, obsessive about the Jews and Mordecai. but he feels very confident and very conceited, egotistical. But now he sees everything he's planned has been destroyed in one evening. Not only, don't forget, the ego has been deflated by the walk around Shushan with Mordecai on the king's horse. That happened just hours before all of this. He comes to the banquet thinking, okay, everything will be better at this banquet. And now he's being accused by the queen as a evil and wicked person. So, and a planned murderer. So when we see in the next pasuk what happens,
Which one?
it says in pasuk, let's go to, let's see, no, 8. When the king returned
8.
from the palace garden to the banquet room, Haman was, in my book, prostrated or on the couch upon which Esther was sitting. So the king exclaimed, would he actually assault the queen while I'm in the house? In other words, what he's saying, he might have gone out and thought, let me go back in and find out what really is going on here. Maybe he calmed down a little and said, this is my second in command guy. How can I just kill him? He's such a bad guy, but maybe let me go back in and let's have a conversation, basically. But when he walks in, what is the thing he sees? The thing that he fears the most. This guy is on the couch with his wife, and the Hebrew is when the king says to him, you would actually assault. The word in Hebrew is conquer. It's a military term. And it's you would rape my wife, you would conquer her while I'm still in the house. What is this beyond chutzpah? So it confirms the fact, yes, Haman, it looks, now and I know that Haman is not after the queen in any sexual way at all. But this whole thing has become that very thing. So to the king, it looks like he's not pleading for his life. He's on the couch with my wife. And it confirms the fact that the king is under attack. He and his wife are under attack. And so what does he say? Immediately, as soon as the king says this, he probably shocks himself by saying that, uttering all what he did. Haman's head is covered.
Who covered it?
Now, what the servants who are there in the room cover Haman's head. Now, why did they do that? We just heard that when he came back from walking the horse and Mordecai, that he covered his head. What is this in reference to?
He's a dead man.
Well, in Persia, when you were considered guilty of something, your head was covered to symbolize that your life was going to be ended, that you no longer could see the big picture, or you couldn't see anything anymore, and this was the end. The narrator may also want us to know that this now, Haman is kept from seeing reality. He's done for. And notice that his head is covered before the king says anything about his punishment. Because in the next verse, it just, well, first of all, it just says, and they covered Haman's face. But okay, so he's a doomed man, but we don't, so okay, what could happen to him? We don't know. But then we get the information that Harvona, the one of the king's attendants, says, without being recognized by the king, without being asking permission to speak, he kind of just steps right up and he says, furthermore, which means he's adding to the conversation here. Furthermore, he says to the king, 50 cubit gallows, which Haman made for Mordecai, is sitting in Haman's backyard. And we go, whoa, it's like, who asked you? Who asked you for this information? But Harvona has volunteered this information, possibly for one of two reasons. First of all, he's standing there and he's seeing the whole scene play out here. Now, it said prior to this that there was a servant that went to Haman's house to bring him back to the party, and we can surmise that it was Harvona. And Harvona could have been waiting in the foyer while Haman is still talking about to his family and to his wife about the gallows or about killing Mordecai and what happened, parading Mordecai around the city. And here Harvona says, looks out in the backyard and sees that there's a gallows there and overhears the conversation. So he could have been privy to that through his visiting of the house to bring back Haman to the party. Or, say some Meforshim, that Harvona could have been part of the plan and one of Haman's minions, or cohorts in the plotting of destroying the Jews. And therefore he knew the whole thing. And then he sees Haman's going down. Well, before Haman has a chance to say, well, so-and-so, name names, he steps up and he says, and oh, by the way, there's a 50-foot gallows in Haman's backyard. So as if to say, I don't have anything to do with this. It's all him. It's all on him. So the king hears this, that there's this gallows, and the king knows that just a few hours ago, he gave the honor to Mordecai, the Jew, of everything that Haman had said. So in his mind, it's fresh that now this guy, Haman, wants to kill Mordecai. So now he wants my wife, he wants me, my job, probably me killed, says the king. And now the man that I honored who saved my life, he wants to kill. So this was the straw that broke the king's back. And that's why he says immediately afterwards, as soon as Harvona is finished, hang him on it. And there's no question whatsoever that that will be his Haman's demise. So we have a Haman who is trembling in terror before the king and queen. We have the king who, out of character, makes two decisions, one decision to ask, who is this person? He wants to know immediately. And then he passes judgment on to Haman as soon as he hears that about the gallows. Now,
Well,
Yes,
there was always one of the Chamberlains that seemed to favor and befriend Esther from the days before she even became queen, that sort of looked out for her. Could that have been the same one?
no, it's not, no,
no.
no,
Okay.
no.
No,
No, it's not. The one who liked Esther very much was, I can't.
I
his
can't
name-
think of a name.
Yeah, but
Okay.
he's mentioned by name, and he is in charge of the women,
Yes.
so he had no connection whatsoever
Okay.
to be at the banquet. So we now are at a place where Haman was on top. He was going to kill the Jews. Now Esther is on top, and Mordecai has fallen. And suddenly, Haman is a persona non grata, and in the Hebrew, the king wants to implies that Haman has done everything possible against the law of Persia in everything that he has done that has been identified at the party. Now, why do I say that? I specify the king has handled everything that he knows about that has happened at the party. What is that? What am I talking about? Does he know
he
that?
became assertive.
What?
He became assertive.
He became assertive when
He made decisions.
he became assertive for the first time because we've seen all along that there is always someone
That he asked advice.
who tells him
Right.
that the decree should say this, that he should say this. He's always asking advice. Okay, so the first thing we see in change of character of the king is that he takes charge. And Esther has given him the opportunity to be the hero. She is willing to sacrifice that heroine part of the story so that the king looks like the hero. Do you understand? She gives that over to him.
Yeah.
She wants him to make the decision, him to rescue her, him to come to her aid and her people's aid. So, and he at the big and when he comes back and he says hang him, he becomes the hero. He gets rid of the bad guy.
But I think that Esther really did not have any other choice. I mean, ultimately, the king has the final say. I think she was just very clever and lucky because Haman just happened to do the wrong thing at the wrong time. But I think she just set up the whole scene so that the king would come to his final decision at that point.
Well,
I
exactly.
mean, she had to give him the final say.
Right. Well, exactly. And it had to be his idea. It had to look like it was his idea.
Exactly.
But when she was setting it up, she didn't know what he would say.
Well, she didn't know, but she certainly hoped that this would, work the way she had kind of manipulated it to become. Absolutely.
The
Yeah.
king was also in the dark about all of this until that second banquet. I mean, it wasn't like he knew what was going on and he could see a different take on it. He was totally in the dark about the connection and all of this when you begin to find out.
Okay. That's fine.
But it's interesting again that you said, it was always somebody else who made the suggestion. The Chamberlain said to him, there's a gallows. He doesn't seem to know all that.
Right.
Right.
Well, think about it. If you have a trusted right-hand man, who's second in command of the whole nation that you have appointed, you would think that all the information would come through that man to you. But here's the second in command guy who is the problem, who's the plotter, who's the evil one. He's not going to tell the king all the details of what's going on. He kept the king in the dark. So the king's trusted second in command was really a conspirator from the very start, and had very strong and definite ideas of what would happen. So we see that the king has really been kept in the dark all along because of Haman. And no one knew what Haman was plotting. No one except for Mordecai. Mordecai had,
Except the gallows 50 feet high people must have been able to see it through the whole city.
well,
So
you would
think
you
they
would
were
think,
on foot.
right? You would think, but as you well know, in people sort of try and look. If you saw a gallows being built, I'm not sure I'd go over to test it out and see what's going on. I'm not sure about that, but okay. People stayed to themselves and hoped it wasn't them who was going to get hung on it. Okay, so now what we find is that that Haman's intent Haman has come to an end here in chapter 7, and we no longer have the evil Haman lurking around. So Harvona, I'd like to just talk about him for one more moment, while he steps in and volunteers this information to the king about the gallows. Like I said, it could either be him saving himself from being identified as one of the conspirators, or as most Mefarshim say, that he was really trying to be helpful, and he had overheard what was going on in Haman's house when he went to get Haman. So at the end of the Megillah, at the very end, after the Megillah is over, there is a poem, and we sing V'gam Harvona Zachor Latov. And that's part of this poem at the end of the Megillah. It's Harvona should be remembered for good. V'gam Harvona Zachor Latov, that he should be remembered for good, because by his identifying that there was a gallows, gave the king a perfect means to kill Haman. And so we sing Harvona, Harvona, la da da. Does everyone remember that at the end of the Megillah reading?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, this year, listen for Harvona, Harvona. Okay. So, all right. I don't want to sing on a recording. So, and then what happens? He says, the king says, hang him on it. Okay. So Haman is probably removed, and the guys, the servants go and take and hang him. That's sort of anticlimactic, right? Now what? And now what? The last sentence that we read in the is the king said, hang him on it. So they hanged Haman on the gallows, which he had prepared for Mordecai, and the king's anger abated. What does that mean? He calms down, but okay. That's it? That's all it took? Kill the guy and I feel better?
Well, his adversary's gone. Nobody's after the queen and nobody's after his job.
Okay,
So
Excuse me,
why not?
the man who was seducing his wife, he's gotten rid of.
okay.
I mean,
Okay,
she wasn't just sitting there like some sweet little angel. She provoked him and he fell for it.
well,
Haman.
she didn't provoke him to fall down on her couch.
Well, yes and no,
No,
because
no.
she knew the king was coming back from the garden and it would be very interesting for him to see this great man prostrating himself in front of her.
Well, yeah, but she didn't plan that part. I'm sure she was scared for her life. But the fact of the matter is,
I don't know, I
The
don't
Megillah-
necessarily,
the Megillah could end right now, right? Could the Megillah end
Right.
now? Esther is saved. The king's job is saved. Haman is dead.
No.
But it doesn't say anything about that the king took away the decree to kill all the Jews.
And there lies the
There we are.
problem. And there lies the problem why we have 3 more chapters. Because the king feels, it says the king calmed down. His anger was abated. He's all good now. In his mind, there's nothing more to do. He's done. He is killed his wife and his adversary. And that puts the whole situation to rest. So
The
ha-
decree is still sitting out
the
there.
decree is still sitting there. So what we want to know is, has Esther accomplished her goal at this point in the story?
No,
Not
the
yet.
decree is still there.
No,
So the answer is partial. She saved her life. So that's her request. But she has not fulfilled the petition part. All she has accomplished is the death of Haman. His decree is still alive and well. And Haman and his minions will have will Haman and his minions have the last laugh, be based on whether the decree still sticks around for the year, or will they celebrate it from the grave?
Well, why didn't the king say to Esther, what now? I mean, he's lost his trusted advisor. He now needs somebody else to advise him. Why didn't he ask her?
Ask her.
Yeah, what to do now?
Well, the queen was not the king's advisor. Don't forget, the
Right.
queen was, while we may see her through the story as an equal, she is certainly not in
Right.
command, and she is certainly not the king's equal. So he's not going to ask her what now, because in his mind, he has completed his task. He has completed getting rid of the adversary and the evil, wicked man that threatens the kingdom and the queen. That's all he's concerned about. So now, in the rest of the chapters, the Megillah devotes itself to what happens and what will happen to this decree and the Jewish people, because only part of Esther's request has been fulfilled, and the king seems to feel that he's done. He feels that he's done his duty. So in the next time we talk, we will find out, does Esther save her people, and how does she do it? And is the king a willing partner in this process? It's very, very interesting what happens. How many of you know, let's ask the question. So we're going to